Hi folks, and welcome back to Meaningful Money. Okay, still here above Porthgwarra Cove on this beautiful June morning, and I hope you're enjoying the shorts. I know I am. We talked about shares last time. We're going to talk about property this time, continuing talking about asset classes, the things you can invest in. What I'm doing at the moment is updating some of the really early videos. This one is an update of episode 32, and this is, I believe, 285, so it's a long time ago, but the video and the audio quality has improved no end since then, so that's why I thought I'd update them. So before we get into what property is, let me thank my friends down here in the bottom right. That's Seven Investment Management, who continue to sponsor me here on Meaningful Money, for which I'm really, really grateful. It helps me to keep going and helps buy me shorts and things. Okay, most people understand what property is. Yeah, it's a building of some kind, or perhaps a land. You know, this sort of cliffside here is property in one sense. When it comes to investing, though, you can divide property into two types. Residential property, which is, houses, flats and stuff like that, and commercial property, which will be shopping malls, office blocks, car parks, things like that. Now, for most people, if we're talking about investing as part of a portfolio, say of funds, we're talking about commercial property. So focus on that for now and come back to residential in a minute. Now, the thing about commercial property is that most individuals can't afford to buy a shopping mall. You know, you probably haven't got the 35 million quid lying around that it might cost you to buy, the local NCP car park or something like that. And so most people invest in a fund of some kind. Now, commercial property funds fall into two types usually. First are bricks and mortar funds. So the fund will actually own buildings. And the other type are funds which hold shares in property companies, so house builders and things like that. And obviously you get funds which are a little bit of both. Now, the thing about bricks and mortar funds which hold office blocks and shopping malls and things like that, is that those kind of properties are fairly difficult to value. They're not like shares which are valued every day by the market. No, shopping malls and office blocks have to be valued by the commercial equivalent of estate agents, and it's an imprecise science. And so it can make things quite difficult to value. Now, property funds will hold a lot more cash inside them than your average equity fund or gilts or corporate bond fund. And the reason for that is that property is illiquid. Now, that's a technical term, but it just means it can be difficult to sell. As you can imagine, there's not tons and tons of buyers out there desperately waiting for a £35 million shopping centre to come on the market. And so finding a buyer can sometimes be difficult. Anybody who's tried to sell a house, particularly at the moment when it's quite difficult, knows that property can sometimes take time to sell. And we call that illiquidity, or being illiquid. And so a property fund manager will hold more cash in his fund so that if people want to take their units out of the fund, he can pay them out of the cash reserve that he's got. But if things are really struggling and he has too many people wanting to take money out, he can impose something called a moratorium, which means basically he can say, yep, I've noted your request to take your money out, but you can't have it for 6 months or for a year, in order to give himself time to sell a property so that he's got the money to pay you out. So that's something to be aware of with property funds, and it's important that you don't have too much of your portfolio in a property fund for that reason, among others. It's also really important to remember that property is not a one-way street. We have had a housing boom. It started in probably the late 90s, most of the first half of the 2000s. Property just went through a boom. Might have got my dates wrong there, but that's certainly what I remember, the property boom. We are not going to have a time like that again. Property is not going to go up in value like it has over that period. Because of that period, property funds used to be deemed to be low risk, but I can tell you that they're not. Property has gone down significantly in value. There are people sitting on 25-30% losses in the value of their investment who are invested in property funds, and sometimes even more. That is not, at least not in my book, a low risk investment. But property is an important part of any portfolio because it is another diversifier. It behaves differently to shares, gilts and corporate bonds and cash, and therefore it's useful to have a small part of it, smaller part of your portfolio held in property in order to spread the risk. Okay, now we talked really about investing in terms of funds and commercial property, but of course you can invest in property in more sort of physical, immediate ways, like buying a house to let it out. We call that buy to let, or perhaps buying a house on what's called homes with multiple occupancy, where you let an individual room out to a different person and they share kitchens and bathrooms and things. My brother-in-law and my sister do that. You can buy a house, do it up, and then sell it on for a profit. There are different ways you can invest in residential property. And a recent session of my podcast was done in conversation with two guys called Rob Bentz and Rob Dix from the excellent Property Podcast. So check that out. That's session number 12 of the Meaningful Money podcast. It's time well spent if you've given any thought to investing in property. They'll give you the things you need to think about before you get started. Okay, that's property investing. Next time we're going to look at commodities. So thank you for watching this one. I might do one more from here actually. I think it's such a beautiful day. So I'll see you next time.